afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call our meeting to order, March the 8th, 2021. I'd like to welcome everyone to the boardroom, and as always, we start our meetings off with prayer and with the pledge to the flag. I will ask Chris if he will lead us in prayer today, and Patrick to do the pledge for us. So let's all start off with that.
Dear God, thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to be here, and ask you just to lead and guide and direct us in the decisions that we make that's going to affect everyone in McDowell County. And ask you just to put a hedge of protection around McDowell, and that we'll get through this pandemic and just be with each and every citizen. In Jesus' name, amen.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Top of the list today, we start off with a very special person, a mayor of the city, Mr. Steve Little, and we welcome him to the podium. If he would.
Tony, could we back up?
Oh, hold on just a second. I didn't get approval on the agenda. There, motion we approve the agenda.
I make a motion we approve the agenda along with the closed session meetings.
Okay. Got closed session meetings.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask for a amendment to add in under new business approval on department head positions for us to approve for hiring?
Okay. We'll add that to the minutes. Madam Clerk. Anything else? Do I hear a motion we approve the agenda as stated with the new business?
I make a motion we approve the agenda with the addition.
Okay.
As
Second.
stated.
All in favor say aye. Okay, moving along now. We'd top of the list, we'll get the Honorable Mayor Steve Little to come back up, and he's got a presentation for us on the history project on the railroad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a treat to be here. I always appreciate so much what commissioners do for the county, and my ability to come here and as a representative of how we work so well together in the city of Marion and the county. It's a treat, so thank you. I could talk from now until this time tomorrow, but I won't do that about this particular project because it's one that means a great deal to me. I began researching this back when I had hair. That was a very long time ago when I was an undergrad student at Wake Forest. I did research on the railroad and even on Andrews Geyser, and it's an incredibly important part of the history not only of North Carolina but of the entire southeastern United States. Until the railroad was built from Old Fort to the Ridgecrest mountaintop, there was not a dependable way for people to go up and down the escarpment of the Eastern Continental Divide, which meant families in the mountain area from Ridgecrest further west were at the mercy of weather conditions. Imagine a family has raised apples or corn or something, and every other farmer in the region raises the same thing. They can't sell it in their neighborhood because they've already got what is for sale. So they have to get it to the market, and to get it to the market means they put it on their wagon and they take it down the mountain. Well, if they load up their wagon and then it starts to rain, and it rains and it rains, the dirt road was truly a dirt road. It was not dirt and gravel, it was dirt. So when it rained, it was mud. And if the wagon wheel couldn't go through the mud or hit a root and broke and fell over, the produce that they were carrying would be ruined, and they couldn't get it to the market. What that meant was The wife had no cloth for children's clothes. She didn't even have a new needle to sew with. They didn't have the money to buy sugar. So those are just minor examples. This was life-changing when this railroad came through. But how it got here is the story, and that's why I'm here. The management of the road has been recognized, and their achievements have been marked. But there's one group whose suffering and whose contributions have never been recognized. And those are the men and women who did the work. Now these were not, for the large part, these were not people from the mountains. These were people, and these people, by the way, were about 98% African American men, mostly from the eastern part of the state. And when they were, this was 10 years after the Civil War. The culture was different. They would be arrested at the drop of a hat, and they'd be sentenced to much more severe sentences than anybody else would be. And it usually included imprisonment. And imprisonment back then was terrible because it was the prisoners from the state penitentiary who were shipped up to Henry Station, which is, by the way, that's the point where when you're going to Andrews Geyser and you're going west through Old Fort on Old Number 70, and you reach the intersection of Mill Creek Road. On your left is the U.S. Forest Service picnic area. On the right, Mill Creek Road, and sitting right there is a blue house. It's blue now. That is the spot where Henry Station was located. That was the westernmost point on the railroad in the entire state of North Carolina until this section was built. Convicts were shipped up in boxcars, about 30 to 35 per load, and they were put to work doing things that you and I couldn't do and wouldn't do. They had no choice. Every one of these convicts who was over 15 years of age had been a slave previously. They knew what slavery was like. And quite honestly, slavery probably was better than the work and the conditions that they faced as convicts. As a slave, the owner had an investment to protect, so he would limit how he would push them. As a convict, there was no investment. Convicts were replaceable. They were expendable. The kind of work they did was gruesomely difficult, brutal, harsh, difficult. But they accomplished in 4 years clearing the path about 15 feet wide all the way from Henry Station up to the western side of the Swannanoa Tunnel. That 15-foot path had to be cleared and had to be leveled so that the train tracks could be laid. The train could not go on the stagecoach road. It was much too up and down, steep, curvy. No, trains can't do that, of course. So these convicts did this work under these conditions that were horrible. They built 7 tunnels. Now, these tunnels were through solid rock. The shortest one was 89 feet. You thought, yeah, that's about from the front wall. I think it's probably further than the back wall for 89 feet. That's the shortest one. The longest one up at the top, 1,832 feet long. Solid rock. They had to start in 2 crews and work toward the middle. This was in 1876, 77, 78, and 79. How that could happen is beyond my ability to comprehend. But that was management that figured it out. But the guys who went in the tunnel with sledgehammers, probably so big I couldn't even pick one up, and they would pound and pound these rocks. And you can imagine the fear that they experienced going into these tunnels. If you go about 20 feet inside the mountain, it's dark. It's dark. And until the tunnel is finished, it is nothing but a deep, dark, damp cave. Their only light was tallow candles that the injured convicts would make from fat from the animals that they would use for eating for their protein supply. These little stinking short tallow candles, but it was some light. That's how they could see what they were doing. But just that wasn't enough. Some black powder was used in these tunnels, and the very first use of nitroglycerin in the southeastern United States was used in these tunnels. The convicts would then, after there would be an explosion, of course they would all leave the tunnel for that. When the dust would settle, they'd go in, and some of them, their job was to reach down and pick up these pieces of rock, 30, 40 pounds, sharp edges. You could always recognize at a distance the ones who had that job, because their black and white stripes had a red area on the belly and on the arms where the rock would pierce their skin. And they'd pick this stuff up, and then they'd have to walk back out. This was not a smooth floor. It was jagged. It was rough. They were wearing crude shoes. They had to carry this outside the tunnel and many times carry it beyond. The conditions were severe. They were brutal. Over 3,000 convicts worked on this project. And reportedly between 139 and 189 died on the mountain. And they were buried where they died for the most part. They'd dig a hole, toss them in, and keep working. There wasn't any official anything that was done for them. So the entire railroad essentially is a long graveyard going all the way up the mountain. Things that we don't even think about. But they managed to do the work. This railroad could not be built today. There are too many regulations that would prevent it. But they did the work, and when it was opened in the late 1879, March 11, 1879 was the day when the two work crews of the Shenandoah Tunnel met. And Major James Wilson, who was the head person of the entire project, sent a telegram to the governor that said, daylight entered Buncombe County today through the Shenandoah Tunnel. Grades and centers matched exactly. I don't see how people with computerized equipment could do that kind of a job, but he pulled it off with nothing but what God gave him in his brain to figure out. But it's the convicts, the people who did the work, the couple hundred women and the 3,000 men who suffered, worked. They slept on a board with burlap sack with some pine straw and leaves for a mattress, and a burlap sack with some pine straw and leaves for a blanket. And this was all year round. Wintertime, summertime, it doesn't matter. The largest stockade where they stayed is roughly where the ponds are, just past where Andrews Geyser today is located, for the round knob lodge that's sitting out there right now. But there were 5 stockades where the convicts lived as they did their work. I've talked long enough, but I'm a member of a committee. There are 11 of us. Dan Pierce, he's a professor of history at UNCA, called me last July and said, I got something I want to discuss with you. This was his idea. He gets the credit. And he and I co-chaired this organization. There are 11 people. We have some from McDowell County, some from Buncombe County as well. Ray McKesson is presently the vice president of our group. we incorporated just about a month ago. We're raising money as we want to build a memorial. The memorial would be about 6 feet tall. It'll be simply a block that would be 6 feet tall, about 6 feet wide, 2 feet thick, made of river rock. It will fit in nicely and match very closely to the memorial that's already out there that the town of Old Fort placed. And will be a plaque with a front and a back that will give the essence of what happened and recognition of the incarcerated laborers, the convicts. We call ourselves the Rail Memorial Project. We've been endorsed by the town of Old Fort. They gave us permission to put this memorial on the grounds of Andrews Geyser. Town of Black Mountain has endorsed us. We're on the agenda to go to the Buncombe County Commissioners as well for their endorsement. And I come here this evening to ask for your support and for your endorsement of this project, because 99% of this railroad is in McDowell County. This is us. This is our project, and we should be proud of it. I sometimes get to speak to the children at Old Fort Elementary, and the first thing I always tell them is, you are so blessed to live in Old Fort. And I get some funny looks sometimes, but I mean that. Old Fort has the heritage and the culture of providing the most significant event in the transportation area in the state of North Carolina, because it truly changed the lives of thousands of people. Before the trains went to Asheville, they got there first in 1880. Asheville was a tiny village, not much bigger than Old Fort is today. So it was the trains that made this happen, and it was the convicts that let the trains come. So I respectfully will hush and simply say that we would appreciate it if you would see fit to endorse the project. Now, I've not come to ask for money. However, if you decided that you thought it was worthwhile and wanted to make a contribution not to exceed $3,000, we truly don't want you. Even if you want to give something, we don't want you to do more than $3,000. That's too much. We're trying to raise money, yes, but money is not why I've come. I've come just to ask for your endorsement and for your support.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we endorse the project as presented by the mayor. And the history is very important. I learned a lot just sitting here today, and I just got done reading the book, The Battle of New Orleans by Brian Kilmeade, and the general down there, Jackson, and all the conflict between the Americans and the British. And history is very important. And we need to learn from history, and therefore I will make that motion that we endorse this project.
I second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was certainly interesting, and we did enjoy it. And
I've left a paper for each of you that elaborates on what I said. Plus, I brought you one of the DVDs of the program. I can't do those anymore. My vocal cord problem won't allow me to do that. So I'm so glad that Mars Hill College paid for having that prepared about 6 years ago when I did a performance over there. I think you might like that. I dress up in the convict costume and talk as though I'm one of the convicts doing the work.
Mr. Mayor, I will watch this before I go to bed tonight. It looks very good. Just by the cover, you want to see that. Can't wait.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it a great deal.
thank you for coming in.
And y'all come see us at the city sometime.
And we will get our heads together on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next, item B is our COVID update, and we have Mr. William Kehler here to present that to us. We'll welcome him to the podium.
Good afternoon. Thanks for allowing me to come back and present the COVID-19 update. Today is day 358 and the start of week number 52 at the Emergency Operations Center. We remain activated at a level 1 activation. So far, our statistics, 40,542 COVID-19 tests have been conducted since the start of this pandemic, with 4,779 positive test results. Today we released 18 new positives for a 14-day positivity rate of 10.95%, and that is lower than when I was last here, and we have seen that decline with each week. Sadly, 76 McDowell County citizens have lost their life to COVID-19 since the start of this pandemic. Happy to announce this evening that is this afternoon, we do not have any facilities, congregate living facilities, in outbreak status in McDowell County, and that's the first time, I think, since July that we're able to report that. And that's another significant milestone or accomplishment that we have made. This past week, 716 tests were conducted. We are seeing the number of tests that are being performed on a downward trend. First week since January 15th that we didn't see an overall decline in the number of active cases. Last week we did see our numbers start to trend up slightly. Hopefully that's just an anomaly for last week, and we'll continue to see our trends go down, but it's something that we continue to monitor very closely. County alert system for North Carolina was updated, and we are now considered a yellow county, meaning significant community spread, but certainly we have seen us go from red down to orange and now to yellow, and we certainly hope to continue that. On the vaccination front, we continue to have an aggressive approach in vaccinating county citizens that wish to be vaccinated. First dose administrations is 8,539 have been administered as of noon today. Second dose administrations are at 4,773. We expect to get about 1,300 additional first doses administered this week, so we're going to be pushing the 10,000 mark by week's end. On the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services website, you're able to view county-specific data in regards to vaccinations. And when you look at the first dose administered as a percent of our population here in McDowell County, 75 years of age and older, we've vaccinated 59.3% of that population with at least the first dose. For 65 to 74 years of age, we've vaccinated 60% of that population. So we are well on our way to achieving significant results with regards to vaccinations. Our scheduling center remains extremely busy. Last week we fielded 1,243 calls. Our average wait time when calling in was at 4.5 minutes. As a reminder, we do have that platform set up to where an individual can request a callback. It holds their place in the line, and the system will call them back, and our telephone operators will help them get their appointment scheduled. And that reduces significant wait times on the telephone. We are vaccinating groups 1, 2, and 3. We added group 3 last week, essential frontline workers, and we anticipate moving to group 4 as the state released on March 24th. Happy to take any questions. I will say we certainly appreciate the continued cooperation and assistance that we're getting from multiple agencies across the county, including state agencies that are also those folks that work here in McDowell but are affiliated with state agencies, all coming together. We had our busiest day on Friday. We've seen some of our longest wait times occur on Friday as well. And we had some significant traffic flowing on Friday morning there at Grace Community Church. We did over 1,500 vaccinations on Friday, and that was, we pushed it on Friday there at Grace. It took a large team, but we got it accomplished. I think we went through about plan A, B, C, and D for our traffic plan quickly Friday morning, but we the team has always adapted and overcome what was thrown at them. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions and appreciate your continued support.
I'd just like to say, on behalf of our board, we appreciate all the hard work that you guys have done in distributing those vaccines. You know, I've driven by there personally and saw your team out there in the cold and in the rain, and you know, we really, as a board, appreciate what you guys are doing. We mean that.
We appreciate that. Vaccines is allowing us to play offense with this virus, and it's full steam ahead, and we're not going to stop until this thing's put to rest.
William, with the new information from the CDC today, new guidelines, are there going to be new guidelines issued or preferred practices for the people from McDowell County from your group?
So the CDC does have new guidance out. I brought that guidance with me tonight. We're still in the process of evaluating it and understanding it. We saw this guidance about 2 hours ago, but it does provide information to fully vaccinated individuals who have either received the full dose regimen, whichever vaccine they're taking, and it's been at least 14 days. And there's a number of bullet points on the CDC, but we'll be pushing that out on our social media platforms and on our website, and I'm sure the local media will also cover that.
Have you gotten any of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine here in the county yet? And what's your perspective on that vaccine?
So we were able to receive some Johnson & Johnson, and we made that available starting today, started booking appointments for it for one clinic specifically on Thursday afternoon. If folks meet the criteria for group 1, 2, and 3, the hospital was gracious enough to do a transfer over to the local health department for the Johnson & Johnson. I'm not sure if that's a consistent flow that's going to be. We know it is this week, but we continue receiving Moderna. We certainly encourage folks make their own personal decision, but the CDC has made it very clear that if you have the opportunity to take one of the vaccines that is available, please do it.
William, the 10.95% positivity rate, give us a timeline. When's the last time we've seen that in McDowell County? That late?
It would be well before the holidays, probably September or October, without having that chart in front of me. But it's definitely been a long time since we've seen that. We're on the right path, but now's not the time to let our guard down. We're on the home stretch here, but we've got to be careful, and we need a little additional time to get these vaccinations rolled out, for people to continue practicing wearing a mask, waiting 6 feet apart, and practicing the 3 W's while we're working tirelessly 7 days a week to get people vaccinated.
Any other questions, comments? No, thank you, Mr.
All
Kehler.
right, thank you.
Next on the agenda is ordinance public hearings. I declare us to go into closed session, go into public hearing at this time, and we will turn it over to Mr. Ron Harmon to give us an update on ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item that I'd like to present to the board was the tower height recommendation. The planning board voted unanimously to raise the cell tower height from 150 to 199. This still keeps us from having to require lighting on the towers. In our discussions with tower companies in the past, we've realized that they determine what height they need. So this 199 just basically cuts out the variance request provision and allows them to make their determination.
Okay, we've heard that report. Do I hear a motion we go out of public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, you need to hear a comment.
Oh, yeah, okay. Do we have any comments on that, citizen or on the board?
Mr. Chair, make a motion to go out of the public hearing at this time.
Okay, we've got a motion, we've got a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'll declare us to go back into public hearing again, and this again will be pursuant to NC General Statute 160D-601 as before. So we'll turn the floor to you again, Mr. Harmon.
Thank you, sir. The planning board worked on some language to have trams put in the ordinance as an approved pathway to Lake James. We've had several tram requests in the past 2 years, and the board felt that if the tram path could meet the 4-foot width for an acceptable pathway to Lake James, it was one of the least invasive forms of being able to get to and from the lake. The board basically said if it stays 4 feet, that's fine. If it's going to have to exceed that, they would need a variance, and so the board recommends that that is put into the ordinance as an acceptable pathway to Lake James.
Any questions, comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to go out of public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board on the tower?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion we approve both the tower ordinance as presented and also the tram, Lake James tram.
So we got a motion to approve both items that were brought up. Do we hear
Second.
any discussion? We hear a second.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Next on the agenda, item D, the G5 Trail Collective update. We've got Mr. Jason McDougald here, and we welcome you, Mr. McDougald. So we'll allow you to do your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am here tonight to formally ask for your support for the G5 Trail Collective project in Old Fort. And that project is a 42-mile trail expansion on National Forest lands surrounding Old Fort. So it's a economic development project with a tourism base, which we've raised $150,000 for to date for design and permitting of the project. Based on public feedback, that project grew from an original 25 miles that was proposed to 42, which is will result in a much more robust tourism product and product for the community as well. But based on that number of trails that has expanded, our permitting costs have also expanded. And so we're asking for the Tourism Development Authority, the county, and the town to join with us and help bridge that funding gap for the project.
Okay. We, Commissioner Vaughn, I think she sits on that committee with you, and she said a lot of good things about it. So we certainly will get our heads together on this. We have any comment or questions on this presentation?
Mr. Chairman, I'm pumped about this. I'll use the word pumped. You need tires pumped up to ride on the trail, I guess, in your bicycle. But I think it's a great project, and look forward to the construction of this and the revenue, but also the possibilities for people to exercise and ride the bikes. I know as a kid growing up, first thing I did, jumped on my bicycle, me and my brothers and friends, we rode 10 miles from the house. Now, back we lived in the country. Now, you can't do that today. You get snatched, but kids. But we did that, and our moms and dads let us go, and we rode on the main highway, off the highway, through places we probably shouldn't have rode. Oh, this is on tape, isn't it? But anyway, I'm just saying we had a good time. And so I'm excited about this project. And one question I've got from the county manager, Mr. Chairman, is isn't there money too also available possibly from the Chamber of Commerce related to Old Fort? Can you enlighten?
I know in talking with Ms. Price, there have been or will be conversations with the Chamber on funds, but I'm not sure from the TDA's perspective put that hat back on where those conversations may be, but she did indicate there would be discussions with Ms. Effler. That was Thursday or Friday, and I'm not sure since then if there's been anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I know that the one of our planning partners and Ms. Epler are at the town of Old Fort tonight doing the same thing that I'm doing here. So I think that is a conversation, a good question for Ms. Epler. There may be some funding there from the chamber. But going back to your comment about the public access piece, the largest piece of the trail expansion came from public comment about those local trails. There was a push to add about 10 miles of trails right around the parking lot that could be used by the community. And that was one part that, kind of increased our trail miles for the project.
Is there a number that you were asking us for?
Yes, sir. So we've gotten a commitment of $8,000 from the TDA for permitting and then $12,000 for planning from the TDA. And we're asking the town and the county for $21 to make up that difference.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion if you entertain one this time and toss it out there and see what everybody thinks. I would make a motion that we do 10,000, which we can have funds identified from the lawsuit settlement that could take care of that, and then look at this again as we start into the budget process further to see what funds might be available. I would make that form of motion.
Any other question, comment?
I'll second that motion.
We've got a motion, now we have a second. Any other discussion on that? Motion and second, all in favor of doing that, $10,000, and looking at it again as we go into our budget cycle and seeing if there's more money available. Motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all of you.
Item E on our agenda tonight, Freedom Life update, and we have our very dear friend, Mr. Danny Hampton, with us tonight, and so we're going to invite him up to do his presentation and introduce.
Yes, it's great to be back with you guys. Again, I continue to thank all of you for your tremendous support to the work that we have the privilege to do. We have a packet of information that we're going to be handing out to you. On behalf of Freedom Life, we're actually here tonight to talk about two different collaborative partnerships that we're working with that I think are exciting. I think the potential for our community is definitely going to be impactful in a very positive way. And tonight, introducing the first concept, which is, you can see on your first page here, Housing for McDowell's Hard to House, is Arwen March, who is the Executive Director for McDowell Mission. And Arwen is going to explain this first partnership collaboration to you.
So what we have the opportunity to do is build some scattered housing throughout the community. And so we've been looking at funding options, and we have discovered that we can apply for community development block grants. However, as a nonprofit, neither Danny's nonprofit or not my nonprofit could do that. That's for counties and municipalities only. And so the good thing about this program is that Freedom Life and McDowell Mission Ministries are working together to develop programming to keep the folks who are in the housing stabilized. And we will continue to work with them. And we have commitment to aftercare programming. We will not drop families in these houses and leave them. We will continue to make sure that they're case managed and that the tenants remain stable and working towards self-sufficiency. Danny's program has programming around that, and so does McDowell Mission Ministries. And so what we are asking for help with is obtaining those community development block funds. Danny's organization and McDowell Mission will work together to write the grants. And we will include a project manager and an administrative person in there to ensure that the county is not burdened with any additional costs. All that we're asking for is for those block grants to be able to flow through and for some participation on our Housing Coalition Board, which I think Brenda is part of. So that's primarily what we're asking for today.
Well, that's not much to ask for. I think we would be more than happy to assist in that, and I think,
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we endorse the Housing for McDowell's Hard to House program and the partnership. And now I've got a question for our county manager, but that's the motion.
okay. We got a motion, second discussion, got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Mr. Chairman, one question we'll ask the county manager. Have you talked to staff to verify on our staff how they feel about this?
Yes, sir. Had the conversation about this, I think maybe a month and so ago. There's that. When we first talked about this with Ms. Bell, being the finance director, we have a lot of experience with CDBG grants, and especially with the commitment on the program management side. It's maybe 5 minutes a week at the most, and I said, is that 5 minutes taken away from, there's limited hours in a week, but she said for what it is, definitely she had her endorsement for these sorts of things.
So just to work with Ashley and his staff, and I think you can get results.
And in addition, just to make mention, I know that Danny's group and my group are also willing to write grants that are available to nonprofit and also contribute those to the total project budget.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you much, Arwen. I'm excited, as you can imagine. We're talking about a grant that if we are able to get what we're shooting for, that will help us build over $1 million worth of small permanent housing units for the hard to house in our community that will be able to be, again, as Arwen said, we're not turning these into drug houses. We're not just dumping people in and walking off. There are going to be people who are continuing to undergo programming, case management, and life skill development. And this just gives us the ability to increase the housing capacity of our community, especially for those who have the least amount of housing available to them. So we're excited, and I'm looking forward to it, again, for the partnership with you guys. I appreciate that. The second part, I'm going to give just a little bit of historical information, and I don't want to waste your time with what you do know. So this has to do with the McDowell County Substance Use Coalition, previously known as the Substance Use Work Group. Is anybody familiar with the Substance Use Work Group? Okay. Well, let me give you just a little bit of background information. Freedom Life is now the backbone organization for the substance. The official name is the McDowell Substance Use Coalition. We've been a part of the coalition since 2014, and we have been the backbone organization for the coalition as recently as December 2020. Currently, there are over 54 organizations within our community, including what I would call every critical organization or agency that plays a major role or a substantial role in dealing with the substance use concerns of our community. Every one of these agencies and organizations are part and have participated in the Substance Use Coalition. And so to give a little bit of quick context to the history, the coalition was formed as the Substance Use Work Group in 2013. And that was part of the McDowell Health Coalition. It was originally one of the pods that was formulated, if any of y'all remember the work of the McDowell Health Coalition at that time. And it was one of the pods, very wisely, from the leadership of the Health Coalition at that time, recognizing that at that time, as it is today through the CHA, the County Community Health Assessment, substance use remains the top health concern for McDowell County. And so it was then as well. And so formulating the Substance Use Work Group to start researching, to start meeting and formulating strategies of how to begin to approach as a community dealing with such an overwhelming community concern. It's been very active since then in two distinct areas. The work group initially divided itself off into an adult focus and then a youth student focus. And the adult focus Some of the things that they've done is you've heard like pill drops, lock your medicine, resource collaboration, promotion, treatment, awareness, education, treatment, collaboration, coordination, and facilitation to try to increase the capacity to get treatment quicker, to try to connect people through a very complex process sometimes of trying to get their needs met. Also recovery awareness and support. And as you guys are aware of, the Blue Ridge Recovery Rally, that up until COVID kind of took our wind out of our sail. We had 3 very successful community recovery rallies seeking to bring awareness to the need in the community as well as to the hope that recovery can happen. On the student side, they've also been very involved through work like the middle school and 9th grade vaping prevention programs like Catch My Breath or Fire in the Wire. Also Red Ribbon, I can't even say that, let me take my mouth, Red Ribbon, thank you. For some reason I can't say NAR with a Red Ribbon Week, which involved classroom education, logo and banner contests, etc., which basically took a week inside the school system in McDowell County and promoted awareness, education, information with our students. Working with RHA and Project for Success grant, also attending coalition training, and they've also been a major part of the Blue Ridge Recovery Rally. And as you guys are also aware, the TIM project through the Sheriff's Department, as well as the DARE project through our police department, all of these things have been the student side of engagement. Well, in 2019, we were recognizing that if we were going to go from doing programming impact that was making some headway to really beginning to make what we would call major substance use healing for our community, that we were going to have to up our game, we were going to have to go to the next level as a collaborative within our community. KB Reynolds at that time partnered with us to hire the North Carolina Institute for Public Health at UNCA, to come in, and starting in 2019, they started partnering with the Substance Use Coalition to begin to do research, data gathering, and because we knew that we had to get more information. You can see in the handout you were given, the first page is kind of just a one-pager of what the coalition is about. If you go to the second page, you can see some data concerning our community. This is through RHA, who is also a critical partner, as well as VIA Health, who's also a partner of the Health Coalition. And I'm not going to go through this tonight. This is for you to take home and look at as you would desire. But it's pretty interesting information concerning substance use in our county. And then if you go to the next page, you'll see this looks like this, McDowell Substance Use Coalition Strategic Planning Process. Through our work with IPC, the Institute for Public Health, we have been busy over the last 2 years, even in this year with COVID kind of slowing us down a little bit. We've still been going after the data, the research, to be able to have the information we need, because otherwise you're flying blind. Because what can tend to happen is without in-depth information, we can make emotional decisions on program implementation that, while they make us feel good, they're kind of like throwing rocks across the pond instead of really sinking down deep to begin to affect major change. And we know as a coalition that we're running a marathon, we're not running a sprint. This problem is not going to go away. We're looking for 1 to 2 generations down the road in our county, starting programs, doing things today that is going to take a couple of generations to begin to make the community impact that we believe can be made. And while that may, what's the use? You've got to wait that long. Well, what happens if you never start? So we're looking for a combination of impact strategies that will do immediate triage. We've got people bleeding in our streets. We need to address that need. But we also, while we're addressing that need, we need to be addressing long-term solutions that's causing the bleeding in the streets. And y'all know far better than me the history of our community. We're dealing with deep-rooted dynamics that aren't going to go away overnight or be addressed with a quick program here or there. But with a very researched, in-depth, collaborative, comprehensive approach, we can come up with a strategy, and that's our goal, a 3 to 5 year strategy, to help us deal with immediate need while also addressing long-term solutions and beginning to implement that process. And you can see, just off of this sheet, the top 5 data sources over the last couple of years that we've been going to. The first one is what's called the whole distance exercise. This was done by what we consider to be the experts in our own community around the substance use struggles that we're having. It was done through the coalition. And you can see the priorities and recommendations that came out of that, both in current and ongoing strategies as well as potential future strategies. We also drew from, with the help of IPH, the McDowell Community Health Assessment, the CHA report that has come out. And you can see under priorities and recommendations on number 2 at the bottom of that first page, mental health and suicide prevention as well as substance abuse, including tobacco, were the top 2 priorities and recommendations that came out of our most recent CHA report. If you turn that sheet over to its back, you can see number 3, which is the recommendations for a healthy, resilient, and inclusive McDowell County, North Carolina, by the Community Development Project. You can also see the priorities and recommendations from there. And then also substance use disorder mapping and analysis by the Community Engagement Project with their priorities and recommendations. And then the NC Opioid Action Plan by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Prescription Drug Abuse Advisory Committee, their priorities and recommendations. And what we're doing right now with IPH is we're taking all of this data, bringing it together, crunching it together, and using it as a foundation, as well as what I'm about to tell you of what we're currently doing. We have 4 action teams right now that the coalition is broken into. Those action teams are sustain and strengthen partnerships and collaborations to make sure that we have the people around the table that need to be around the table to really be part of the solution to this. Also prevention, awareness, and outreach. Treatment, recovery, and prevention services. And then improving social determinants of health, SDOH, related to substance use and mental health within our community. These are 4 teams that the coalition is made up of, all addressing different dynamics of what we need to do. Well, after the last couple of years of really diving into this research and seeing some we were all set to have a major new recovery rally last year. Well, it didn't happen. That's all right. We're not having one this year either. We understand that by May, it's not going to be a good time with everything going on. But it's coming next year, I promise you, and it's going to be bigger and better than it's ever been, with a whole lot more to celebrate, because what we're now doing is we're turning the page. The last 2 years has given us a whole lot of understanding. And some of the things we realize is we need to increase organizational capacity. What we have right now with our Substance Use Coalition is we have a bunch of well-committed people in our community that are dedicated to trying to help bring viable solutions, long-term and short-term, to our struggle as a community. But they're volunteers. These are people working other full-time jobs while also trying to be a part of bringing solutions in regard to this. And so one of the things we've recognized is we need a full-time substance use program coordinator for McDowell County to begin to do something that is going to be extraordinary. Well, I've got good news. KB Reynolds approached us back in February and asked us to write a grant that will give us, over the next 3 years, $525,000 for the specific purpose of building up the capacity of the Substance Use Coalition so we can be a viable solution in the long-term planning of dealing with substance abuse in our county. We've written that grant. The grant is now in process. We will know in April if we receive the grant. If we do receive the grant, we'll be notified in the middle of April. By the end of April, we will receive the funding. The funding will pass through Freedom Life as a backbone organization because the coalition is not incorporated. But 100% of that money is going to the Substance Use Coalition. And the first thing we're going to do, our goal, if we get the grant, would be by June or July to have a full-time program coordinator hired for McDowell County, first ever. To then, over the next 3 years, the other funding will go to also continue to pay IPC to be able to work with us as we continue our intensive data research and data preparation and data strategic formulation, so that then we can, within 3 years, the goal is that the Substance Use Coalition will become a 501c3 nonprofit corporation for McDowell County. And that is Freedom Life's commitment to what we believe in this work. We're dedicating the work of our staff, of to help make sure that we help groom the capacity of the coalition, because with the grant potential that is there, once this coalition can become a 501c3, there's tremendous grant potential for them to be able to continue to engage, as well as one other dynamic. And this is what, in talking to KB Reynolds and writing the grant, this is what we're hoping can happen. And I know you guys know about this, but right now there is this process of final settlement that's going on with the opioid lawsuit settlement funds. And are y'all up to date on that, pretty much, on the status of that? So I don't need to even worry about telling you guys that. I know in talking with some of the people at KB Reynolds, some of the information we've gotten is it could be a year when those funds come out, and then in the information that we've had, that it's also, they're still in the negotiation stage through the North Carolina Association of Commissioners, what the language in the settlement funds is going to include, what the focus of it is, as far as how those funds, the parameters on that they're going to be putting on how the funds could be spent. From talking with some of the people, and you guys can also talk to me about this, because I'm sure you guys are well informed on your side of this, but one of the things that we're hoping to do is to partner with you in helping to bring data-informed guidance to the decision-making on the spending of those funds and investing it in the substance use work of this county. Because anybody that you would need to go to, any organization that you would need to go to talk about, what do you think about these funds? Guess what? They're already on the coalition. And so they're already a part of it. They've been a part of it. COVID kind of took some people out for a while, but that is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to build this coalition around partnerships, and the key partnership for our county is right here in this room. And what we're trying to do is build the coalition capacity to maximize its value to you as a board of commissioners for our county, to be able to be your data research arm, to be able to be your questioning arm, to be able to be your communication arm, so that instead of running, trying to figure out, well, this group says this group says this group says this, we're trying to bring it all into one discussion-oriented group where all the collaborators are around the table, each contributing to the dynamic of the strategies and of the priorities that come out of the recommendations of the coalition that would be made to this group. And so what we would like to throw out for a proposal tonight is that you would consider allowing the Substance Use Coalition to become a viable partner with you guys in the opioid fund management. Now, that's not all the funds we're looking for. We've already got plans to write through Dogwood Health and through other funding sources, grants, to bring even more money than what the settlement funds will bring into the county. But it makes sense to us that everybody concerned about substance use needs to be in the same room working together towards solutions that together we believe can be far more effective in their investment than if each of us are doing our own thing in our own area. And that's one of the things at Freedom Life we've been committed to from the beginning. I realized early on that if we were going to help people who have been incarcerated achieve life sustainability in a whole new capacity, we did not have the resources by ourselves to do that. Y'all have been amazing in your partnership with us in that regard. And I think we've seen the impact and effect of many, many lives and families in our community as a result of that. The Substance Use Coalition is the exact same dynamic. It can have that same exact capacity for many, many years to come. I know the settlement funds alone are, what, 18 years? That's the number that I was given. Once they're passed down, the funding will be for 18 years. Now, some of the reports that I've gotten through KB Reynolds is that the funding may be a little front-end loaded, where you get a little bit more front and then it stables out on the back end a little bit. But regardless, I think this is an exciting opportunity, as well as much needed in our community for all of us to be working together, because this is too valuable. This need is too great. So I throw that proposal out for partnership with you guys we'll do our end. We're going to be very busy trying to continue to do the work that you guys need us to do to be a valuable partner so that you can have well-informed research, data, and decision-making criteria in everything that will come up. So I throw that out to y'all.
I did have the opportunity here a couple of years ago to hear some testimonies from some of the people that have went through your program, and it's amazing the focus that you have in your group and the energy that you guys have is really impressive, and we do appreciate what you guys are doing. Question, comments from the rest of the board?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion we endorse the work that the McDowell County Substance Use Coalition is doing and will do, and that when there's money awarded, which we don't know fully what it is or when it is, that there'll be discussions at that point by the board and staff, and the staff will receive recommendations from the county manager and staff on how to move forward at that point, as far as the money side of it.
Okay, we got a motion.
Second.
Got a second. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good, thank you.
You'll notice in footnote, and I have talked with Bill about this, Bill and I have had conversations. We've been trying to get Daryl Strawberry in our county since COVID first started. He was booked for November. Well, we have settled on a final date. We believe that June 17th should be safe enough. All of the indicators right now are that that's the case. To go ahead and do an outdoor event. It's going to be at the Big League Camp down on Lake James with Dennis Whitson and Don Sellis and those guys. But right now, we are planning on Daryl Strawberry being in our county on June 17th for a big community impact event. So.
And you would recommend bringing all your Daryl Strawberry baseball cards down there to be autographed, right?
Yes, absolutely. Inundated. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to old business. Item A under old business is the public shooting range. Mr. Wood.
Yes, sir. I'll be really brief. Just the project continues, of course. There are some pictures in your packet that are, if you don't get a chance to go out to the site and see it firsthand, are very eye-opening, especially page 36 on from there. You see where they were preparing the footers for the bridge over Muddy Creek. So that is a pretty big deal. We're, knock on wood, we've been a little bit drier the last week or two, but they've had just a slow time due to all the moisture we've had over the winter, but they still done a great job. The building itself, that will be the office reception area, that should be prepared to go out to bid very soon. And that'll be sort of the last piece of the puzzle, I guess, because once the road is in place and so forth, they'll be able to work on that.
Okay, thank you for that. We're certainly excited about that and seeing progress on that. Next item is item B, which is the emergency service building update. Mr. Wood.
Yes, sir. Another just brief update there. Talk about the ribbon cutting next Tuesday, 8:30. You're all invited, obviously. It's your event. Mr. Kehler will make comments as well as you and staff will all be invited. That will be the first day of operation as well for that facility, so that's wonderful. Buildings and things like that are nice, but enhanced service is what it's all about. There's also additional picture or two from the headquarters where you see steel rising, so I'm sure it's even more so moved along than what you see in your packet. So that's great to see vertical construction.
We're excited about that, and we certainly know that Mr. Kehler is tickled to death with it. We're just happy to be able to help that group. Next item is the budget process update for you, Mr. Wood.
Again, just a brief update for you and the public. We started our FY22 process I guess officially a couple of weeks ago. I meet with the first department tomorrow on the internal side. On the external side, the chairman and I met with a subcommittee of the Board of Trustees for the college on Thursday to go over some of their capital needs. Definitely look forward to having both boards together sooner rather than later there. We will share that information from that meeting for your next packet. There has been a meeting scheduled with the school board for next month to talk about some of the items of common interest, including the budget. And so definitely look forward to that. I just will bring attention to, there's just one out of probably 8 or so pages, capital facility plan request that was in the packets, budget packets this year. This is something we wanted to start last year, but something kind of got us off track, I guess the COVID. So we essentially just stopped the budget process around this time last year and just froze everything. So we didn't do anything new or different because of so much uncertainty and lowering projections. So we did start this year. Staff response has been very positive. We're in the process. They've at times talked about capital needs, carpet and desks and chairs and buildings and all sorts of roofs. Those sorts of things. This is a lot more delineated and specific, so it'll help out Mr. DePoyster, myself and Ms. Bell and the board for understanding what the needs are. So glad to get that going this year after a delay from last year. So any questions?
Of that, you're going to be including the property plans and budgeting process as well, correct? As far as, for an example, the Catawba River Park up there, the needs and stuff of trying to get the planning.
That's right. So for Ms. Huskins being the director, when she and I meet, having a breakdown of what those would be over the next 1 to 2 years, and then most of the items in a ball field are probably more maintenance that should be met within the 1 to 2 year period. But if there was a desire by the board to do something, or a suggestion to do something grander, might be in more in the 3 to 5 year period. So, yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Wood. We'll go to new business. Item A under new business, administrative items. Mr. Wood.
You have about 4 items here. The first item is the extended paid sick leave policy. This was, I call it the COVID policy, but we, based on feedback from last month, we're looking at some other policies, and this seemed to be more of the common name, so it's essentially the same thing, the COVID policy. Quick background again, the federal government, Congress passed a law last year that put into effect a mandate starting in April and ending in December that you had to cover, as an employer of a certain size, certain situations. So if an employee was out sick with COVID or waiting for a diagnosis, or if there's a school closure, a daycare, etc., you as an organization were required to cover those and provide leave specific to those situations. So that expired. We brought essentially the same criteria to you for consideration. I heard some feedback, so we took that feedback and incorporated into a revised document. Mr. Walker and I talked about this earlier. What you had last month was about that long, literally, and this is longer. There's a lot of legalese. I don't know if Mr. Coates is here, but I think he would be very happy to see all the legalese that is going into a policy as far as disclaimers and so forth. But to get down to the actual policy items themselves, an employee would qualify under this policy for paid leave if they're subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order as ordered by the health department. The employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, much along the same lines. They're experiencing symptoms of COVID and seeking a medical diagnosis. In that instance, getting a test. And the fourth one, this is something that we encountered in looking over the last couple of weeks. The employee is experiencing side effects from a COVID-19 vaccination. As Mr. Kehler can attest, based on information he's heard from various folks that have been through the vaccination process, some individuals have had side effects to the first or second dose. Oh gosh, I feel a little bit of pain in my arm. Some have been, like they have a strong bout of the flu. And so some employers are putting language in there to encourage perhaps employees to get vaccinated. And if they do, are one of those lucky folks that have more severe flu-like symptoms, that they would be covered under this policy. But so the 80 hours is left in there. The time period, it expires June 30th, at least based on what's in here. That was based on, in our exploration of other counties, we saw some that ended in April, some in May, quite a few in December. There's really no rhyme or reason. People were just kind of guessing on maybe what a good date would be. So we plugged in the end of this fiscal year. Again, anything you see is subject to being tossed or amended however you want to do it. Any questions?
Okay, discussion from the board.
Mr. Wooten, how would this relate to the private sector in regard to the number of days being the 80 hours? How would that tie into the private sector and what is offered with a private employer? Would you have any kind of data that could compare to that?
I do not. Our research was limited to public employers.
And the counties that touch McDowell County, which counties offered a policy and which didn't?
The ones that we were able to get a response from, Rutherford County did not continue the policy. Burke County and Buncombe did. The city of Marion has kept it in place. Again, from the region, Haywood County kept it in place, Cherokee. Swain County was one that did not keep it in place. There were others from elsewhere in the state, but these are the regional ones that did keep something along the same lines. Again, some ended theirs the end of this month, April 15th, June 30th, and one was December 31st. So.
And number two on this, Mr. Wooten, the employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine because they are infected with or have been exposed to COVID-19. Now, that last phrase, exposed to COVID-19, would that be, I think it would need to be a direct exposure versus an indirect to a known positive. I mean, because a known positive, sure, there's a greater chance of catching possibly COVID from a known positive if you were within the feet, they say, in the time period. That would be more of my concern right there. How will you track an outside provider and verifications just like you would normally?
If it's not someone that's on staff, we would require a note. Documentation.
From the doctor?
That's right.
This question is for William. Mr. Chairman, how many, since y'all have been given the shots and y'all have done roughly 10,000, William, side effects from receiving the dose, whether it be first or second dose, and this is really tough, so you just swag at it. What kind of percentage do you think would see something that would be significant to what is being, what would be number 4 in this proposed short-term policy?
I don't have any specific data, but what I've read, it's about 50% will have some type of side effect. That's pretty much consistent with what we've seen on staff.
And those side effects would linger roughly?
It can linger 24 to 36 hours. Some it may linger for 4 hours. I've had some employees that had symptoms for a couple hours and some for 36 hours.
I've been told that possibly the older you are, the less side effects that you are experiencing, so that the younger generation that is receiving the shot may have more symptoms.
That's consistent with the feedback that we've received from individuals talking to folks at the clinic. And full disclosure, I don't have specific statistics for any of this from McDowell, but just our experience at the clinic, that is consistent with what we do.
Have you seen a trend, Kehler, that with the people that have had the COVID and then take the shot, that maybe they have more of a problem with the shot?
I can't really speak to that. We've heard with the Moderna that, and that's the only one other than the Johnson & Johnson, that we've given is folks who have previously tested positive for COVID seem to have those flu-like symptoms or general weakness, those types of side effects on the first dose instead of the second.
With your specific department of contact tracing, have any of your employees that are going out in the field picking up sick people with COVID caught it from that, or have they caught it from other ways of catching it?
The majority of employees that we have had that tested positive for COVID, in contact tracing, it has been linked to an external source and not a direct exposure, or coming from a direct exposure internally. And I think for EMS or our testing team we're absolutely, there's zero tolerance for any lack of or breach of PPE. Mask, we wear masks in the stations at all times, unless they're in an area by themselves. And we wear N95 respirators while we're caring for an individual, while they're traveling, 2 people in a cab together. So there's very rigid safety protocols that we hold people accountable for. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've been so effective in not having a significant outbreak at one of our facilities.
This question is for Mr. Wooten. Do you think that there's any abuse? And I know it would be limited probably in scope, but do you think there's any abuse by an employee who constantly has an issue with saying, oh, somebody in my household has possibly been exposed to someone with COVID, and they're saying that they want to stay at home because of that? Is there any, do you think, on your level, because we wouldn't know about that, but have you had feedback saying there might be some abuse if the policy's in place?
I think I'm not aware of any specific instances of that sort of situation. If there was what appeared to be abuse, where the department head was aware of, well, this is, the 3rd or whatever many times you've been out, the department head has a responsibility to, make sure documentation is obtained for whatever that situation. I will say under the federal policy, there were several employees that were out more, and that, it was a handful, I think maybe 5, that with a lot of daycare type closures. And that was covered under the federal policy, where if daycare had an exposure or school system or whatever, those were covered under federal policy, where if they were just closed, we had to allow them to go home and take care of that child because that was a covered reason. Now, that's not covered here. Again, hopefully that's not happening in either instance. The school system has had a few quarantines for classes specifically since January. I'm not aware of any daycare closures since January 1st, and so again, that's not even covered here. They would have, employee would have to be on their own at that point, but this tightens it up from what the federal policy is to transition towards where there's no need for one. And that's based on whatever y'all think it is. You may think it's today, you may think it's June 30th, you may think it's December. Whatever it might be is based on your comfort level. This seems to be a good idea even still to have something for the protection of the organization based on what is still a risk out there.
Question for Mr. Kehler.
Go ahead, Tom. Let me ask one right here, make one statement here. It would seem to me that our best interest would be county employees. And if this was all work related and employees were around someone in their workstation or at their workplace that had tested go, then I would certainly be on board for giving them the opportunity to stay at home. But when we're talking about, everybody's out in the public, and we can't really, in my way of looking at it, we can't be held accountable for what people do when they're off work.
And one question I've got to follow up on what the chairman said. William, this is you. So someone has been around and known positive, and they call and go to whatever provider to be tested. What is the time, and I know that with the number of positives and number of tests being decreased now, and this is a possible, if the board doesn't, not saying they'll do it or not do it, but what would be a timeline for a turnaround on a test so they'll know?
So,
being the long test, not the rapid.
So a couple things reading the new guidance says out. Number one, if the employee is vaccinated, has had both doses of Moderna or Pfizer, or had one dose of Johnson & Johnson and we're 14 days past that final regimen, there's no quarantine and there's no need for testing, off of an exposure. That employee will remain at work. That's a big deal for us. So there's safety guardrails in place now. If that individual became symptomatic and had symptoms consistent of COVID, the guidance does encourage them to see a provider. So we have the ability to do rapid antigen testing, which is a 15-minute turnaround, or PCR testing. And now you're seeing some of this PCR testing that is turning the same day as more of these nucleic acid machines come online, which our hospital has one now and is processing some. But in general, if we send it to the state lab through the health department, 48 hours to 72 is the turnaround time.
I will say this, that on what's recommended, I do not agree personally with 80 hours. That's 2 weeks. Based on the data and the new CDC guidelines that are out now, I think that's extreme unless they've got a case of COVID. Then William, that would change the CDC guidelines per number of days out. Is that correct if they are positive?
If they're positive, what I'm reading since I've been here is it's the same recommendation. I don't see any changes as far as the quarantine period. But full disclosure, I've only read it's a 3-page document. I've read it once. I like to read stuff 2 or 3 times to make sure I haven't missed something, but I don't see that changing.
But I do believe that if people come into contact with somebody or catch it within their work cell, for example, at DSS, you know, while they're performing duties for the county, you know, I believe there needs to be some guideline to protect those people.
What kind of number of days you talking about? What do you think?
Well, I think if, what is it, 10 days, it's still,
That is correct.
okay, you know, I think that, for example, if Cheryl showed up, or clerk of the board, she showed up with, tested positive with COVID vaccine, and actually had direct contact with her, he's gonna be quarantined for 10 days. And I think that, you know, which he's salary, but maybe I should have done it the other way, well, either way, but anyway, I think that the county should be held accountable for the time that they are off because of that.
Of the practices that are being done now in all departments, are temperatures being checked at the beginning of the shift?
They are, yes, sir.
Mask being required in all areas?
They are required.
And sanitation, washing the hands and stuff like that is recommended.
That's right.
And with what Mr. Kehler said, from what he has, he's not been able to go back to a job, and his department is specifically dealing with COVID. It's been through other, possibly at home or other practices, not through work. So, is there a option with the department heads for individuals to work from home that can work from home if they need to quarantine and not go home and just sit there? Is that an option?
The only department that has been previously authorized to allow teleworking is DSS. It's been on a case-by-case basis at this point.
And what was the first day that the county employees could sign up for shots?
Last Friday?
Yeah, if they weren't related to public safety, it was last week. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Friday, we had quite a few good.
Yeah.
I do believe that we as commissioners we're kind of drawn to the employees of the county, but also as a taxpayer, you know, my business, a lot of other businesses are not getting additional help at this time, and I've personally got an issue with the COVID policy, and it's my recommendation to forego approving this.
Any other discussion?
Now, if someone's been directly exposed, they have that 10-day period, that's when the test would be provided to them. They have to wait that 10 days, is that correct?
So they can be tested, begin no earlier than 5 to 7 days they can begin the testing. But the quarantine period would run to 10 days. There is one exception in there to get someone back for critical positions on that day 7. But we've been skeptical to use that at times just because we've seen people convert after that. We've been very conservative with that.
No discussion. Do we entertain a motion on anything tonight? You are asking for some action to be taken tonight.
Yes, sir.
I'd recommend not making COVID policy format as a motion.
I'll second for discussion.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. That was for discussion. Okay. Next step.
Mr. Chairman, I know that Patrick's given sort of his viewpoint on that, and I've sort of skimmed around and tried to get some questions answered. And Chris spoke. Commissioner Vaughn, I'd like to hear Commissioner Vaughn's perspective too, because she's a former county employee. And I think it'd be important to hear from a former county employee.
Well, I'm sitting here kind of, I guess you could say, on the fence. As county employee, we are allowed so many sick days and so many vacation days and so forth. Under normal circumstances, those are awarded per tender and per everything else, and we get those, and they're ours to use when needed. You know, the sick days are when needed, the vacations when wanted. So there is already a built-in option there of taking some time if it's a family member or if it's yourself. So again, I'm kind of torn between both. I don't want us to push people that won't use the time that they're already allotted, and they come in there and then we have an outbreak in a department. That's not good either. So I guess I know there's already a built-in provision of time that's awarded because you work under a place. When I worked in a hosiery mill, we didn't have any sick time. We didn't have any vacation time. If it closed down, then we went on vacation because Mr. Clevenger had no say in when we didn't have orders. He'd say, all right, get out and get your vacations done because we're going to make hay when the sun shines. You know, and again, there's already a provision built in with sick time, and they've not had to use any of that since pandemic started because basically it's been covered. To my knowledge, is that...
Madam Clerk, what was the result from the vote while ago?
We had a motion not to adopt the policy and a second to allow for discussion. So we are in discussion.
Okay, there wasn't anything to say. One thing that, and you go ahead.
No, I'm good. Go ahead. Chris,
That
you're
sort
next.
of triggered something with me that Commissioner Ellis said was that his company didn't provide anything for employees. I dare say that no company does.
No, I don't think so.
You know, you made me think about something. I dare say that no company provides any protection for employees that in that manner.
Actually, tell me and remind me, what an employee earns a sick day for one sick day for every 30 days work, is that?
It's
So many hours.
It's based on your month. So you earn essentially one sick day and one vacation day per month worked, per hour, based on hours.
So they get basically a vacation day and a sick day every month that accrues until they use them, right?
That's right.
Okay. I know where I need to be at.
Am I correct in thinking that up at this point, no one's had to use their what we would term as personal sick pay leave, personal sick hours, or vacation hours due to COVID? We covered that at this point?
That's right. It's counted as COVID leave unless it was some other illness.
Mr. Allison, you got any comment? Look. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Favor of the motion?
Got a motion?
I'm in favor of the motion on the table.
Go ahead, vote. Okay, you made the motion. All right, we had the motion and the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay.
The other items, there are a few
Anything else
more.
under administrative items?
Yes, sir. We've got a couple of titles to add to the position list. These are staff that are already here. Just need to reclassify their positions. Get on that page. There's a clerical supervisor, as well as an incident management team technician. And again, these are staff we already have, so we're not creating to fill. It's just retitling.
And the current salary stays.
That's right. It's just adding the title.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the 2 positions and the change in name.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next item.
The next item, you have EMS transport write-offs. We'd ask you to approve.
Please report.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item.
Then you have budget amendments GF 36 through 42.
GF 36, GF 42,
Through 42.
342.
Be glad to go over any of them.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we approve the 36 through 42.
Got a motion second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else, Mr. Williams?
Yes, sir. Other than that,
Tax
Mr. Chairman,
matters.
I would like to bring up to, in the new business of what we amended, just for as far as approving the department heads' positions for us to approve.
We'll do that, I guess after citizen comment.
All right,
That's okay.
that sounds good.
Item B, tax matters. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
these are your typical rebills, refunds, etc. in the tax department.
Make a motion we approve as presented.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is that all under tax matters?
Yes, sir.
Item C, board appointment. Mr. Wood.
You have a first reading for a planning board vacancy. We'll have that advertised and we'll bring it for you for the April meeting for appointment.
Okay, no action required. Okay, moving on to citizen comment. Is there anyone here tonight that wishes to speak? If you do, you need to come up to the clerk's desk and sign in. Any other citizen, that's all that signed up, so that's it on citizen comments. Commissioner staff reports, communications. At this point in time, we're going to go into closed session, so we'll excuse everybody from the room, and do I hear a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second. Consider ourselves in closed session at this point in time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.